James Whitehorse?
Yes. Who are you?
Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We need you to come with us for questioning.
You can't just come here during ceremony. This is our land.
This is federal business.
Questioning about what? I'm in the middle of a ceremony.
Turn around!
Turn around! Hands behind your back.
You're assaulting a tribal council member on sovereign land. You have no jurisdiction here.
Stop making this difficult.
I'm not resisting. This is law.
They didn't knock. They didn't call ahead. They didn't ask permission from anyone. 2 ICE agents rolled up to a ceremonial gathering on Lummi Nation land in Washington state at 2:34 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon and decided they had the authority to arrest a man participating in a salmon blessing ceremony his ancestors had performed for 3,000 years. The man they handcuffed wasn't just a tribal member. He was on the tribal council. He'd served his community for 14 years. And the land they stood on wasn't federal property, wasn't state property, wasn't even disputed territory. It was sovereign Lummi land, protected by treaties signed in 1855. But agents Kevin Dorsey and Lauren Mitchell didn't care about treaties. They cared about a database hit, a name match, a hunch. And when they walked onto that beach and put hands on James Whitehorse, they triggered a legal reckoning that would cost them their careers and the federal government $2.2 million. The beach cameras captured it all. Not body cams that could be turned off, not dashboard footage that could be lost. Tribal security cameras installed after years of fishing rights violations by non-tribal poachers. For cameras covering the shoreline, 2 covering the ceremonial grounds, all recording in 1080p, all uploading to tribal servers in real time. Every word, every movement, every violation. If this is the first time you've found this channel, subscribe now. Because these stories don't tell themselves, and accountability only happens when people pay attention. James Whitehorse was 47 years old. He'd been elected to the Lummi Nation Tribal Council 3 times. He worked as a fishing coordinator, managing sustainable salmon harvests and teaching younger tribal members traditional practices. He'd never been arrested, never had so much as a speeding ticket. His grandfather had fished these same waters. His great-grandfather had signed the original treaties with the U.S. government guaranteeing Lummi fishing rights in perpetuity. On that Saturday in late September, James was participating in the First Salmon Ceremony, a sacred gathering where the Lummi people honor the return of the salmon run. 60 people were present. Elders, children, families, traditional drums, cedar smoke, songs sung in Lushootseed, the Lummi language. James stood near the water's edge, wearing a red ceremonial vest embroidered with traditional orchid designs, jeans, and boots. He held a carved cedar talking stick. He was in the middle of offering a blessing when the dark SUV appeared on the access road. Agent Kevin Dorsey was 38, a 9-year ICE veteran with a file full of complaints about aggressive tactics. Agent Lauren Mitchell was 31, 5 years in, known for following Dorsey's lead without question. They'd received a tip earlier that week. An anonymous call claiming someone named James Whitehorse was employing undocumented workers at a fish processing facility. No details, no evidence, just a name and an allegation. They ran the name, got a hit, didn't bother verifying which James Whitehorse, didn't check tribal enrollment records, didn't contact tribal authorities. Just drove onto sovereign land during a sacred ceremony and decided to make an arrest. The camera angle from the North Shore captured their approach perfectly. The black SUV parking near the ceremonial fire pit. 2 agents climbing out, tactical vests visible even from a distance. James looking up, confused. An elder, a woman in her 70s named Alice Hilaire, stepping forward. The agents ignoring her completely. Dorsey walked straight toward James. James Whitehorse? James set down the talking stick carefully. Yes. Who are you? Dorsey flashed his badge, too quickly to read. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We need you to come with us for questioning. James glanced at the gathered community, then back at Dorsey. Questioning about what? I'm in the middle of a ceremony. This is Lummi land. Do you have permission from tribal police to be here? Mitchell moved to flank his right side. Sir, we don't need permission. We have federal authority under immigration law. We have information you've been employing undocumented workers. We need you to come with us. James's expression shifted from confusion to controlled anger. The camera caught it perfectly. The tightening of his jaw. The deliberate breath. Employing undocumented workers? I'm a tribal fishing coordinator. I work for the Lummi Nation. Every person I supervise is a tribal member. You've made a mistake. Dorsey pulled out a printed sheet, a database record with James's name and an old address from 15 years ago. This shows you operating a fish processing facility. James stepped closer, looking at the paper. That's not me. There are multiple people with my name. I've never operated a processing facility. I'm on the tribal council. This is ancestral land. You're interrupting a sacred ceremony. You need to leave and contact tribal authorities if you have questions. Alice Hilaire, the elder, raised her voice. Her tone was sharp, protective. You can't just come here during ceremony. This is our land. You're trespassing. Dorsey didn't even look at her. Ma'am, step back. This is federal business. Another tribal member, a younger man named Marcus James, pulled out his phone and started recording. Within seconds, 3 others did the same. Mitchell noticed. Sir, put your phone away. Marcus kept recording. This is our land. You're the ones who need to leave. Dorsey turned back to James. Mr. Whitehorse, you can cooperate and come with us voluntarily, or we can detain you for obstruction. Your choice. James stood perfectly still. The ceremonial fire crackled behind him. 60 people watched in silence. I'm invoking my rights under the 1855 Treaty of Point Elliott. This is sovereign Lummi territory. You have no jurisdiction here without tribal consent. You need to leave. Now. Dorsey reached for James's arm. James pulled back, not aggressively, just firmly asserting his right not to be touched. That was all Dorsey needed. He grabbed James's wrist, twisting it. Mitchell moved in, taking the other arm. James didn't fight. He didn't struggle. But he didn't submit quietly either. You're assaulting a tribal council member on sovereign land, James said, his voice loud and steady so every camera would catch it. You're violating federal Indian law. You're violating treaty rights. This is illegal. The handcuffs went on at 2:41 p.m., 7 minutes after the agents arrived. Alice Hilaire was crying, shouting at the agents in Lushootseed. Then in English. He's our council member. He's done nothing wrong. You can't do this here. Marcus kept his phone steady, narrating for the camera. They just handcuffed James Whitehorse during First Salmon Ceremony on Lummi land. No warrant. No tribal permission. This is being recorded. James kept speaking, projecting his voice. My name is James Whitehorse. I'm an elected member of the Lummi Nation Tribal Council. I'm an enrolled tribal member. Number L, 4429. I'm a U.S. citizen being illegally detained by ICE agents on sovereign Lummi land without jurisdiction, without tribal authority, and without cause. Today is Saturday. The time is approximately 2:41 p.m. I have committed no crime. They marched him toward the SUV. His boots dragged slightly in the sand. His ceremonial vest caught on Mitchell's tactical gear. She yanked it free without care. The elder Alice tried to follow, but Dorsey turned and pointed. Ma'am, if you interfere, you'll be arrested too. They put James in the back of the SUV. The door slammed at 2:43 p.m. The vehicle pulled away, kicking up dust, leaving 60 witnesses standing in stunned silence around a ceremonial fire that still burned. Marcus uploaded his video to Facebook before the SUV even left tribal land. Within 10 minutes, it had 400 shares. Within 30 minutes, tribal leadership had been notified. Within an hour, it was on local news. Within 2 hours, it was national. The Lummi Nation Tribal Police Chief, Daniel Solomon, saw the video while off-duty. He immediately called the Lummi Attorney General's office, then contacted the FBI, then issued a formal complaint to the Department of Homeland Security. The tribal chairman, a man named Gerald Fry, was in Seattle for a meeting. He canceled everything, got in his truck, and drove straight to the ICE field office in Bellingham. At that same ICE office, Dorsey and Mitchell brought James into an interrogation room. James said nothing. He He'd already invoked his rights. He sat in silence, hands still cuffed behind him, ceremonial vest now wrinkled and dusty. Dorsey tried anyway. Mr. Whitehorse, we have evidence you've been employing undocumented immigrants at a seafood processing plant. If you cooperate, this goes easier. James stared at him without speaking. Mitchell leaned forward. We know you operate under multiple business names. We know you've been avoiding labor audits. Still nothing. Dorsey slammed a folder on the table. You think being on tribal land protects you? It doesn't. Federal law supersedes tribal authority in immigration cases. James finally spoke, his voice calm and cold. I want my attorney. I will not answer questions without counsel present. And you should know that every second you hold me here, you're violating the Indian Civil Rights Act, the Treaty of Point Elliott, and about 6 federal statutes I can name off the top of my head. Your careers are over. At 3:18 p.m., the door opened. Not a supervisor. FBI Special Agent Monica Reeves and a Bureau of Indian Affairs investigator. They looked at Dorsey and Mitchell with expressions that could melt steel. Both of you. Now, James was released at 3:34 p.m., exactly 53 minutes after his arrest. His brother, a tribal attorney named Samuel Whitehorse, was already there, along with the tribal chairman and a civil rights lawyer from Seattle named David Chun, who'd spent 25 years litigating tribal sovereignty cases. The drive back to Lummi Land was silent except for phone calls. Chun was already coordinating with the ACLU, with the Native American Rights Fund, with congressional offices. By the time they arrived back at the ceremonial grounds at 4:11 p.m., the fire had been ceremonially closed. The gathering had dispersed. But the beach was full again, this time with tribal members, community leaders, and 3 news crews. James stood on the same beach where he'd been arrested 90 minutes earlier and spoke. His voice carried across the water. This afternoon, 2 ICE agents entered sovereign Lummi Land without permission, without jurisdiction, and without cause. They interrupted a sacred ceremony. They arrested me in front of my community, in front of elders and children, based on false information they never bothered to verify. I committed no crime. I violated no law. I was targeted because someone with my name was accused of something I had nothing to do with. But this isn't just about mistaken identity. It's about federal agents who think tribal sovereignty is optional, who think they can enter our land, disrespect our ceremonies, and violate our rights without consequences. They're wrong. The Justice Department opened an investigation within hours. Not days. Hours. The FBI interviewed every witness. They seized the tribal security footage. They reviewed Dorsey and Mitchell's case files and found a pattern. In 6 years, Dorsey had conducted 31 immigration enforcement actions near or on tribal lands in Washington state. 28 involved Native Americans. 23 were released without charges. The pattern was undeniable. By Monday morning, both agents were on administrative leave. By Tuesday, their badges and weapons were seized. By Wednesday, criminal charges were being discussed. James filed a federal civil rights lawsuit 4 weeks later. The complaint was 47 pages. It detailed not just his arrest, but the broader violation. Unlawful detention, assault, violation of tribal sovereignty, violation of treaty rights, infliction of emotional distress. And it named Dorsey and Mitchell personally, along with ICE as an agency. The trial took place in federal court in Seattle 8 months later. The jury was diverse: 2 Native Americans, 1 from the Puyallup tribe, 1 from the Tulalip tribes. For white jurors, 2 Asian American jurors, 1 black juror. They watched the security footage. They watched Marcus's cell phone video. They heard James's testimony about being handcuffed during a sacred ceremony. They heard Alice Hilaire describe the trauma of watching her council member arrested in front of children. Then came the devastating cross-examination of Agent Dorsey. Agent Dorsey, when you received the tip about James Whitehorse, what steps did you take to verify it was the correct person? I ran his name in the database and got a match. Did you check tribal enrollment records? No. Did you contact Lummi Nation authorities? No. Did you verify the address on the database matched his current residence? No. So you arrested a man based solely on a name match? The prosecutor let that hang. Agent Dorsey, do you know how many people named James Whitehorse live in Washington state? Dorsey shifted. I don't have that number. 17. There are 17 men with that exact name in this state alone. 4 of them are Native American. You arrested the wrong one. We had reason to believe you had a database hit and a hunch. You drove onto sovereign tribal land during a sacred ceremony and arrested an elected tribal council member without doing any verification. Is that correct? Dorsey had no answer. When you were told this was Lummi land, what did you think? I thought we had federal authority that superseded tribal jurisdiction. Did you? The prosecutor pulled out a legal brief. The Indian Civil Rights Act of 1968. The Treaty of Point Elliott, signed in 1855 and still legally binding. Title 25 of the U.S. Code governing tribal sovereignty. All of these limit federal authority on tribal land except in specific circumstances. Immigration enforcement without tribal coordination is not one of those circumstances. Did you know that? Silence. Agent Dorsey, in your 9 years with ICE, have you received training on tribal sovereignty? Yes. And yet you proceeded anyway? I believed we were acting lawfully. Mitchell's testimony was worse. She admitted she'd followed Dorsey's lead without questioning the legal basis. She admitted she'd heard James invoke treaty rights and ignored it. She admitted she'd seen the ceremonial gathering and still participated in the arrest. The defense tried to claim qualified immunity, but the prosecution destroyed it. Qualified immunity doesn't protect agents who violate clearly established constitutional rights. Tribal sovereignty has been clearly established since 1831. The Treaty of Point Elliott has been law since 1855. These agents didn't make a mistake. They chose to ignore the law. The jury deliberated for 14 hours over 2 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Liable on all counts. The damages phase took another 3 days. James's attorney presented evidence of PTSD, anxiety, damage to his reputation in the community, and the cultural harm of being arrested during a sacred ceremony. Then came the punitive damages argument. This wasn't just about compensating James. It was about sending a message that tribal sovereignty matters. The jury awarded $2.2 million. $400,000 in compensatory damages. $1.8 million in punitive damages split between Dorsey, Mitchell, and ICE. The courtroom was packed with Lummi tribal members. When the verdict was read, there was no celebration, just quiet dignity. James sat with his hands folded, his brother beside him, his community behind him. The judge, a Carter appointee named Harold Ito who'd presided over tribal law cases for 30 years, delivered his own statement. The actions of these agents represent a profound disrespect for tribal sovereignty and the treaties that form the legal foundation of this nation's relationship with indigenous peoples. They entered sacred land, interrupted a sacred ceremony, and arrested a tribal leader without cause. The verdict reflects not only the harm done to Mr. Whitehorse but the message that must be sent. Tribal sovereignty is not negotiable. Dorsey and Mitchell filed an appeal. It was denied. ICE settled for an undisclosed amount rumored to be substantial. Both agents were terminated. Their law enforcement careers ended. Their names now permanently attached to a landmark tribal sovereignty case. James used a portion of the settlement to establish a legal defense fund for Native Americans facing federal overreach. He still serves on the tribal council. He still coordinates salmon harvests. And every year at the First Salmon Ceremony, he tells the story of what happened on that beach. Not as a victim, but as a reminder. The Lummi Nation implemented new protocols requiring federal agents to coordinate with tribal police before entering tribal land, except in life-threatening emergencies. Violations result in immediate legal action. Other tribes in Washington adopted similar policies. The case became required reading in federal Indian law courses. Years later, when asked if he'd forgiven the agents, James's answer was measured. Forgiveness is between me and the Creator, but accountability is between them and the law. Those agents violated sacred space, violated treaty rights, and violated the sovereignty my ancestors died protecting. The $2.2 million isn't about revenge. It's about making sure the next federal agent thinks twice before stepping onto tribal land like they own it. The security footage is still used in training for tribal police and federal agents. It shows exactly how quickly authority becomes criminality when sovereignty is ignored. 2 agents learned that the hard way. And somewhere in tribal communities across the country, people saw that verdict and felt something they don't often feel. Proof that treaties still matter, that sovereignty still means something, that sometimes the system works. Should federal agents face automatic prosecution for unauthorized entry onto tribal land? Comment below. Because what happened to James Whitehorse wasn't just about one man. It was about whether 170 years of treaties and sovereignty mean anything when a federal agent decides they don't. If you believe tribal sovereignty must be respected and that federal agents aren't above the law, subscribe and turn on notifications. Tomorrow we're covering another case that proves cameras and courage can hold even the most powerful accountable.